Alrighty. The goal of today is to go over issues that I've seen popping up in kind of papers at large, give you an opportunity to make note of things you need to fix, or maybe just fix them all in general, and then you'll have a little time at the end of the day to continue to iron things out and go from there. Tomorrow, I will not be here if you have me for class in the beginning of the day from 8 to 11. I'll be up in the district office doing fancy district office things. But I will still be next to a computer. So the agenda for tomorrow is to have it to be a draft day. And if you have questions for me, email me during draft day, and I will get back to you. Should be pretty quick because I'll just be sitting in a room with some people. Wednesday is going to be polish things up day. So I'm just going to kind of get you into groups of 3 with a printed out copy of your paper on Wednesday, so that you can figure out what needs to be ironed out. And then Thursday is when you turn this bad boy in. Does that make sense for like how the week goes? So today we're going over common issues, introduction, conclusion. Tomorrow, draft, finish things up, print off your paper, email questions to Mr. Lindenberg. Come in on Thursday with a printed off paper, iron things out, and then turn paper in on Thursday. Got it? All right. So common issue number 1, and hopefully some of you already know this fun little thing. On your paper, I want you to press Control F. Press it at the same time. You should get a little blinking box in the top right of your screen. This allows you to search for specific words, phrases, pieces of punctuation as they exist in your paper. There are certain words that are blacklisted when it comes to appearing in academic writing, meaning these words should never appear in the paper unless they are part of a quote. Again, these words should never appear in your paper, any paper, unless they are part of a quote. Those are words like I, me, my, you, your, or words that end N''T. So in this little blinky box right now, put down N''T. Everyone, N''T, type it in your little blinky box. That will highlight every time you have N''T in your paper. What you have to do to fix N''T is just go through and spell out the word. So if you have don't in there, you just change that to do not. If you have can't in there, you just change it to what? If you have wouldn't in there, you change it to, okay? So you just change N''T words to these words. If you have a word like I in there, most of the time people use the word I in conjunction with the word believe. I believe the British shot first. In order to fix that, you just eliminate I believe. So I believe the British shot first becomes the British shot first. Now, what would be the problem with that sentence if I put it in there? What? Definitive. I would need to change it to? Yeah, so if I say I believe the British shot first, that changes to it is more likely that the British shot first. So I, me, my, you just eliminate them for the most part. When you see words like you and your in your paper, there's a bit of a continuum on how to fix words like you and your. The easiest way, which is simultaneously the worst way, is to change the word you and your to like person, per, or people. So if you have a sentence that says something like, you would think that blah, 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 you can just change that to people think that blah, 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 blah. A person, blah, 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 blah. So that's the easiest way, but the lamest way. The coolest way is to identify who is this you that you're thinking of. Maybe it's Americans. Maybe it's colonists. Maybe it's people who believe a certain thing. So the more specific you can become with your you, the better, but you need to name the you. Does that make sense, students? Again, what words don't appear in our writing under any circumstances? I, don't, me, my, can't. How do you fix an N''T word? How do you fix a word like I? Generally, just delete it. How do you fix a word like you? Easy fix, change it to person or people. Better fix, be more specific. So press Control F, hang out with your paper for a moment, start to make some changes, make notes to yourself, and then at 9:13, we'll move on to the next common error and how to fix it. Ready to go. Did you not charge your Chromebook?
I tried to, but I left it on. So,
Oh.
But I.
Yes. Wait a minute. I don't know. Can you? Come on. It's like the coolest music.
You're right.
Can you wait 5 minutes? We're going to talk about the next thing starting in 30 seconds.
5 minutes.
All right. Next fun thing. Scroll down in your paper until you get to the first moment where you use a quote. We're going to talk about punctuation in and around quotes to make sure that that is all good to go. So highlight your first quote in your paper. Okay. Thing number one. Some people, we got to learn the legend here, like a map key. If I scribble, that means that it is like my own writing, stuff that I'm coming up with. If you see a line in what I put up here, that is using a quote. Does that make sense? Okay, so if I did this, and this would be Mr. Lindenberg's own writing, quote. Now, when you're punctuating a quote, most important thing, the quote goes in quotation marks. That's the easy part. No punctuation right here at the end of the quote inside of the quotation marks. So if your quote is happening at the end of the sentence, under no circumstances should you have punctuation right here. You go parentheses, author's last name, page number, parentheses, period. Now, those of you who are in CIS, at the end of your quote, your author's last name is the document. So you just put the word document. And your page number is the document number. So if you're using document 1, in quotes, you should go quote, document 1, quote, period. If you are in AP Lang, you would use author's last name and page number. Now, since these are all internet documents, you really just need to do quote and then author's last name, quote, period. Don't worry about a page number for this bad boy. Again, most important thing, no punctuation right here inside of the quotation marks. Quote or parentheses, doc, blank, parentheses, period. Question?
Do we have to write out the full Word document, or can we just say doc 3?
I am presuming that you do. If you don't want to, ask Mr. Potter. Now, that's if your quote happens at the end of a sentence. Let's say that I have my own words, and then quote, and then my own words. Now, if that's the case, again, quotation marks still go around your quote. Where do you suppose you put parentheses, author's last name, and page number? If you're thinking right here, you would be wrong. It still goes at the end of a sentence. Again, no punctuation right here before the parentheses. Parentheses, doc, whatever, parentheses, punctuation goes on the outside. Let's say you have your quote at the beginning of a sentence, and then you have your own words. Quotation marks here, your own words. Where do I put parentheses, author's last name and page number? At the end of the sentence. Where does my period go? What goes right here? Nothing at all. Okay, so you want to go through your quotes right now and make sure that it's author's last name and page number at the very end of a sentence. I forgot one. Holy moly. Let's say that you have a sentence that is literally just a quote. Again, quotation marks. Does any punctuation go right here? No. Parentheses, author's last name, page number. Where does my punctuation go? Outside right here at the end. So scroll through your quotes and make sure that you have author's last name and page number or doc whatever at the end of the sentence, and that your punctuation is outside of your parentheses. Take about 2 minutes. Ready, set, go.
Can you scroll up?
Author of this article. There's no
Yeah, you've been meeting that. The whole entire
And solar power won't even work today. I'm recording all this too, PS, by the way, so if you forget something and you want to remember it, Google Classroom, all that jazz. Now would be the time.
I mean, it makes sense. But no, they're like, oh, they're
All right. We talked about words that shouldn't appear in your paper at all under any circumstances. We talked about making sure we put down the correct citations. One person asked a really important question. Now, let's say there's when you're using a quote, sometimes you're quoting like an author, and sometimes there's the quote within a quote. So let's say my author is Bemis, but in the article, Westphal is quoted and is saying something. So Bemis wrote an article, blah, 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 blah. And hey, Westphal says, and then Westphal is quoted. What name do you put in the parentheses at the end of your sentence? Bemis. You never put Westphal inside of those parentheses. The parentheses is reserved for who wrote whatever article you took something from. Make sense? Okay. Now, quotes within quotes. Okay, so let's say that I have my own writing. I use a quote. Boom. My quote ends. Author's last name, period, over there. Now, let's say that there is this section of the quote is Westphal saying something. So if you remember, Bemis wrote this. He quoted Westphal, and then Bemis wrote the end. So you have a quote inside of a quote. Now, if your quote inside of the quote happens in the middle, you put one quotation mark here and one quotation mark there. So it's double quotes, single quote around the quote in the middle, double quote at the end, author, last name, page number. Let's say that you have the Westphal part right here at the beginning of the quote. If that's the case, you would go double quote, single quotation mark where Westphal's parts end, and then double quote at the very end, and you're good to go. Let's say Westfall's part happens at the end of my quote. Where do I put my single quotation mark? Where it starts. Do I need to put anything extra right here? No, I do not. Last name, page number, period at the end. Now, let's say that the whole thing is Westfall. So Westfall has said all of this. Where do I put my single quotation marks? You don't. It is just double quote. Does that make sense? Okay. One more fun thing before you can go prowl around in your quotes. Oftentimes, people will smartly change phrasing of words in a quote so that it sounds nice considering what their sentence is. Or sometimes people will add entire words or short phrases to their quotes. Again, so that the quote is woven nicely into your sentence. If you do something like that, you need to utilize brackets and ... You use brackets if you add something. You use a ... if you are eliminating something. So if we go back to, let's say I'm reading something. This is my quote. If I want to use this part of the quote and this part of the quote, when I get to my paper, I'm writing my own words. I got my quotation marks. I put this part in there, and then I use a ... to signal that this part was eliminated. And then I finish my quote out, quotation marks, parentheses, period. Make sense? Let's say that here's my quote, and I just want to use this part. So I'm writing my sentence out, quotation marks. Now, do I need a ... in this situation? No, I do not. You are only using a ... if you are eliminating something in the middle of the quote that you're using. So if I'm using this whole kit and caboodle right here, doesn't matter that I have deleted this. I would still go by quote, parentheses, period. So only ... if you're eliminating something in the middle of your quote and you're using. So that would mean when you are writing, and this would be a good thing to check, those of you that already have ... you can press Control F, put your ... in there. If you have a ... at the beginning of your quote like this, and then you get to your quote, or conversely, if you go quote, and then you have a ... at the end, these are both wrong. And you would eliminate these ... Make sense? Okay, now let's talk about adding things. So sometimes people like to change the form of words. So my quote says walk, and I want to change that to walked. Or sometimes people, there's not a word here, and I want to add a word, like maybe Americans. Or maybe I'm adding the word they. If you change something in a word, you just bracket off that you change the word walk to walked. If you're adding a word, you put brackets around the whole word. An exception would be if you changed a word like run to ran. Do you bracket the A or do you bracket the whole word? Who wants to hazard a guess?
The whole word.
The whole word. Okay, if that's the case. So you use brackets to add stuff into your quote to make it make more sense. Got it? Okay, so take 3 minutes, look at your quotes. Again, make sure that they are punctuated properly. Make sure that they are quoted properly. Make sure you're using ... correctly. And if you've added anything, put those bad boys in brackets. So you want to just roll through your quotes and make sure things are in good standing. Say that again. Yeah. Gus, why are you looking at Jeffrey Dahmer? Yeah, I can. Yeah. Yeah. How do you think I guessed that Gus is looking at Jeffrey Dahmer? Yeah. I know that Autumn Wood right now is reading something about the notorious documentary that accidentally killed hair metal. So. Easier. We're going over watch this.
Stop breaking my mind.
Just stop.
Say that.
Just wait. Your introduction. Always close mind. Yeah. Yeah. Alrighty. Hopefully some of you, this is kind of something you already have done. If I'm repeating stuff to you, just feel comfy drafting. Those of you who don't know about intros and conclusions, pay attention now. So we got words that are important that should not appear on a paper. We know the ins and outs of how to properly punctuate our quotes. Introductions and conclusions. Okay, now for your introduction, especially those of you in CIS, don't overthink it. You're just going to put forward something that's brutal and robotic sounding, and that's fine. You really just need to check some boxes. So for CIS, think you should be introduced to hook, roadmap, thesis. Hey, your hook can be something like a quote. It can be something like contextualization. It can be something like a question. So you just need to think of it as something that maybe could hook somebody into your paper. It does not need to genuinely be interesting. So you could be like, hey, you know, people fight in schools and no one knows who started it. That's kind of like Lexington Concord, period. You could have a quote. So-and-so said all men are created equal. Well, that's a bunch of baloney because Lexington Concord, period. Whatever. Just get something in there if you're going to start with a quote for your hook. Contextualization, you could just overview what's going on in Lexington Concord. On a dark day in 17 blankety blank, a shot rang out that changed the trajectory of the Civil War, not Civil War, the Revolutionary War, period. Great, contextualization. So hook, roadmap, don't overthink it. Roadmap is your topic sentences. And so you have your topic sentences, just play around with the phrasing of those. That becomes your roadmap. You might want to include references to rebuttal in your roadmap if you want to, but generally roadmap is topic sentences. And then thesis, that's easy. That's your thesis. Not too much to explain there. Hook, roadmap, thesis. Don't overthink it. Try to get somebody's interest. Summarize your topic sentences in the order in which you're talking about them, and slap your thesis on at the end. Those of you who are in AP Lang, yours is going to be a little bit more interesting. You want to overview the complexity of issue, and then you want to end with your thesis. So complexity of your issue means that is eyewitness testimony an important part of the criminal justice system? Is memory reliable? So you have these two opposite things that are true at the same time. Just acknowledge that. It doesn't need to be a big whole thing. And then end with your thesis statement. So this is how you come up with introductions. Just follow the formula. For conclusions, CIS people, your intro went hook, roadmap, thesis. Your conclusion flips it around. So restate your thesis, rephrase your roadmap, and we know roadmap equals what class? Topic sentences, and then end with a hook. Mr. Lindenberg, when he was in high school, fancied himself a existential thinker. So I would always end my papers by talking about how this whole thing changes the world, man. You know, so rad. So I'd go home, I'd turn on a lava lamp, I'd turn down the lights, and I'd just think about how this Lexington and Concord stuff speaks to us as humans, man, on a level that's still true today. Okay, so you can try to blow it out and synthesize it if you want to. Otherwise, you could try to get all moody. If you can't come up with a good hook at the end, don't worry about it. Just end it with roadmap. It's not a big deal. Re-emphasize the point you're making. Question?
Potter wants us to format it in a way where it's contextualization, like context. So I guess that would be the hook, then thesis, or then roadmap, and then thesis.
Yeah.
So
in your conclusion, just go thesis, roadmap, and then contextualization if you want. Just flip it around. For AP Lang people, you already know how to write your conclusion. Your conclusion is your new criminal justice system. So how are you changing it? How is that going to work? And we talked about that last week. So we know how to get bad words out of our paper. We know how to punctuate quotes. We know how to start and finish this thing. Tomorrow is a draft day. Email me questions as you have them. Let's say that you want me to look at a specific paragraph. Email me that paragraph or share your paper with me and say, hey, Mr. Lindenberg, please read the paragraph that I highlighted blue. If you give me a question, that makes it all the better. So instead of saying, Mr. Lindenberg, read this paragraph and tell me what's what, you should only be asking that question if you think your paragraph is ready to hand in, or if you think your paragraph is the worst thing ever. A better way to go about things would be to say, hey, Mr. Lindenberg, can you check my rebuttal? Or Mr. Lindenberg, can you please make sure my topic sentence is in good shape? The more focused you make your question, kind of the better the feedback process works. But we have 10 minutes for me to answer questions as they pop up. That's the jam for today. And I'll see y'all on Wednesday, unless you have class with me in the afternoon tomorrow. Yeah, go to the bathroom. Go to the bathroom.
Yeah, just talk to Potter about when he wants to. And if he does want to during that time, then you would want
I just want to tell you, it's not going to be in the search box. It's just we'll sub that on there. No, you said it. I would.
Not really. You're gonna hit me with it. And I didn't think.
I mean, mine is. Well, the basement at work, literally is and I have to go down there by myself.
Are you not going to use them as they don't paragraph?
I don't know.
So every one, are you going to put the rebuttal on the paragraph?
Yeah, that's what we do. I can't. You go under and you cool down, so you're just really putting and then you get hypothermia. I'm already freezing and walking and being and then I was like, oh my gosh, the like on the outside. Yeah, one of my friends was like, I read it in there. But like they
Your parents probably want kids that they can
You know, I've never met people that are like edgy. Well, I And Lindy? Okay, so, you mentioned that I knew something about rape taking place in like private settings. And you mentioned that I should back it up with like an actual case.